Stop. Don't hit her. She's your mother. The voice sliced through the thick Georgia heat like a siren. Ethan Blake froze mid-swing. Ethan Blake, billionaire tech mogul, founder and CEO of Brightcore, had just been caught in the act of trying to strike an elderly black woman. Seconds earlier, he was coming off a long board meeting, tired, irritable, and under the pressure of an upcoming acquisition deal. The woman had appeared from nowhere, dressed in layers of patched blue cloth, skin like old leather, eyes sunken from hunger. She had touched his car window, then followed him to the store's sliding doors, mumbling something he didn't catch. Then she grabbed his sleeve. He'd spun, furious. "Get your hands off me." She didn't retreat. "Just some bread, sir. I haven't eaten since." That was all it took. Fury rose in him. Not because of the request, but the audacity, the desperation, the closeness. He'd had her moved earlier by store security. Yet here she was again, hand trembling on his arm, eyes hollow with hope. His hand had risen on instinct. Then came the voice. He spun toward the speaker. A young black woman, thin, exhausted, wearing a faded gray maid's uniform, stood between him and the old woman. Sweat dampened her brow. Her breath came fast. But her eyes stayed steady. She held her hands out as if she were bracing for a blow herself. But Ethan didn't freeze for long. His face contorted, disbelief crashing into fury. "What the hell did you just say?" he snapped. "She's your mother." The maid repeated, her voice softer but unwavering. The crowd outside the Buckhead grocery store gasped. Phones rose instantly, pointed at Ethan like an execution squad. "Are you insane?" Ethan barked. "You think you can just walk up to me and spout nonsense?" "I'm not lying," she said. "Just look at—" "No, you listen to me." He stepped toward her, towering over her small frame. "You don't know me. You don't know this woman. And you sure as hell don't get to tell me who my mother is." A few people in the crowd murmured agreement, not with Ava, but with Ethan. "That girl's crazy. Always looking for some drama, trying to get money out of him." Ethan jabbed a finger at her. "You think this is funny? Some ploy to get cash out of me? A stunt for attention? No, sir. I'm trying to—" "Shut up." Ava flinched, but she didn't move away. The old woman tried to reach for Ethan's leg, whispering, "Son, bread, please." Ethan jerked his leg back as if she were poison. "You see?" he shouted. "She's delusional. And you," he pointed at Ava, "you're exploiting her." Ava shook her head desperately. "Please, just listen. I can show you the truth. Let me—" "I said stop talking," Ethan roared. His temper, always tightly wound, finally snapped. The stress of the acquisition deal, the long meetings, the endless pressure, the public eyes, it all collided in a flash of heat. Ava took a step closer, trying again. "Sir, let me show you." Ethan's hand lashed out. The crack echoed across the parking lot. Ava's head whipped to the side, her cheek instantly reddening as she stumbled back, barely catching herself before she fell. The crowd gasped. A woman shrieked. A man cursed under his breath. And yet, some in the crowd still turned on Ava. "That's what you get for lying." She pushed him. I saw it. Always playing the victim. Ava lifted a hand to her cheek, blood at the corner of her lip. But her eyes, though shocked, did not lose their clarity. "Please," she whispered, voice hoarse but steady. "Just look at her wrist." "Enough," Ethan roared. "Security, get these people away from me." Two guards rushed over, unsure, nervous. Even they seemed conflicted. Ethan Blake wasn't someone you angered, but hitting a woman on camera? That wasn't something you ignored either. Ava pointed at the frail old woman. "She has a birthmark on her right wrist, just like yours." Ethan's jaw clenched so hard the muscle in his cheek twitched. "I don't have time for this." "You do," Ava said. "Because this old woman, she has been calling you my son since she saw you step out of your car." "Joused, tarreting." The old woman nodded faintly, tears streaking the dirt on her cheeks. "My boy," she whispered. "My Ethan." Ethan froze. The world seemed to tilt. The sweat on his forehead turned cold. "Show her wrist," Ava insisted. The guards hesitated. then gently helped the old woman roll up the sleeve of her tattered dress. A small, dark birthmark lay there, shaped like a comma. Ethan's breath hitched. Ava looked him dead in the eyes. "Now show yours." I am not doing." A woman from the crowd shouted. "Just show it, man." Another echoed. "If you're so sure she's lying, prove it." Under the pressure of hundreds of eyes, Ethan's hand lifted to his sleeve. Slowly, reluctantly. His fingers shook. He rolled the cuff back. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The mark identical rested on his wrist. His mouth opened, but no words emerged. Ava stepped closer, bruised cheek throbbing, voice gentle. "I told you. She's your mother." Is crazing. The old woman reached for him again. This time, Ethan didn't pull away. Her hand cupped his face, trembling. "My son," she breathed. "I looked for you in every sunrise, every crowd." Ethan's lips quivered. His knees buckled, dropping him onto the burning pavement. His palm pressed to his chest, as if his heart were breaking or restarting. I almost hit you," he whispered. "God, I hit her." He looked at Ava, guilt crashing over him like a tidal wave. Ava winced but shook her head. Right now, she needs help. That's all that matters. The old woman's body sagged suddenly. Ava caught her. "She's fainting, we need to move." Ethan snapped into action, shouting to his driver, "Get the car, now!" Security parted the crowd as Ethan lifted the fragile woman into his arms. People stared, stunned, conflicted, ashamed. Ava followed, hand still pressed to her injured cheek, limping slightly but determined. Just before Ethan climbed into the SUV, he turned to her. "You're coming with us," he said, this time not in anger, not in disbelief, but in something closer to fear. Fear of what he didn't know, and fear of what he almost destroyed. Ava nodded. The doors slammed shut. The SUV sped away carrying a billionaire, a bruised maid, and the mother he thought he'd buried 15 years ago. Their lives, bound by one moment of truth and violence, had just crossed a line none of them could ever return from. If this story moved you, like the video and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Who knows? Someone near you might be watching too. The interior of the SUV was cool and silent. His mother lay limp in his arms, her shallow breaths barely lifting her chest. Her skin, paper-thin and worn, seemed almost translucent under the filtered light from the tinted windows. Ava sat across from him, clutching the side panel with one hand, the other holding a napkin against her bleeding lip. Her face was bruised. Her gaze was unreadable. Ethan tried not to look at her. He couldn't. Every time he did, he saw his hand, his fury, his failure. "Hospital?" The driver called from the front. "Yes, nearest trauma unit," Ethan replied hoarsely. The SUV surged forward. Ethan looked down at the old woman, at the woman he had nearly struck. The woman he'd called a liar. She looked so small now. Her gray head rested against his shoulder, her breath rattling. Her hand, brittle and dry, clutched his shirt like a child clings to a parent. He lowered his voice. "Mama." Her eyelids fluttered, but she didn't answer. He turned toward Ava. "That thing you said. About the birthmark. How did you know?" How did you know?" "I saw it on her wrist," Ava replied softly, her voice rough from pain. "And I remembered seeing it on yours once. In a magazine photo. Years ago." "That's it? You saw a mark and assumed she was my mother?" Ava didn't flinch. It wasn't just the mark. It was her eyes. The way she looked at you like she was seeing someone she'd been searching for her whole life. Ethan rubbed his temples. "Jesus Christ. She said your name before you spoke to her," Ava added. "She didn't beg. She called you, my son." He looked at her. Finally, really, looked at her. "You stood in front of me. You got hurt. For this." "She was about to be hurt worse," Ava said, shrugging slightly. Ethan swallowed hard. He had built a billion-dollar tech company, negotiated contracts with governments and Fortune 500 seconds, but nothing had ever made him feel as small as he did now. His voice broke. "I hit you." "I've had worse," Ava said. "That's not an excuse." Silence. Outside, Atlanta blurred by in a rush of billboards, trees, and stoplights. Ethan looked down again at his mother. She disappeared 15 years ago. I thought she was dead. We searched. Police, detectives, even private firms. She was just gone. Ava nodded slowly. Then she wasn't meant to be found. Not until now. The SUV pulled into the emergency entrance of Piedmont Atlanta Hospital. Nurses with a gurney met them before the car even stopped moving. "She's not breathing properly," Ethan shouted as he carried his mother out. They laid her down, oxygen tubes already in place. "This way, sir," a nurse barked. Ava trailed behind, unnoticed by most, barefoot and bloodied, but focused. Inside the trauma unit, doctors and nurses worked quickly. Vitals, IV lines, monitors. The beeping and shouting became a chaotic melody of urgency. Ethan stood beside the bed, helpless. For all his power, he was now just a son watching his mother disappear again. A nurse tried to move him. "Sir, we need space." "I'm not leaving her," he snapped. Then Ava appeared at his side, her hand lightly touching his arm. "Let them work," she said, her voice low but firm. He turned to her. "I can't lose her again." "You won't," she said. "But she needs more than your guilt right now." Ethan nodded, stepping back with a reluctant breath. The door shut. He was left staring through the glass. Ava sat on a bench, the fluorescent lights casting stark shadows on her bruised face. Her hands shook slightly as she folded them in her lap. "I'm sorry," Ethan said after a long silence. She didn't look at him. "I know. I don't know what happened to me out there. I saw red. I didn't even see you as a person. That's not who I want to be." "You were protecting yourself," she said, in the worst way possible. Ethan paced, fists clenched. The door opened. A tall doctor in scrubs stepped out, removing his gloves. Ethan rushed forward. "Is she okay?" "She's stable for now," the doctor said, "but malnourished, dehydrated, signs of long-term trauma. Her wrists have markings, possibly from restraints." Ethan's eyes darkened. "What kind of restraints?" "Old bruising. Possibly chains. She's been through something terrible. We'll run full diagnostics, but right now, rest is what she needs." Ethan nodded, trying to swallow the rage that rose in his throat. The doctor placed a hand on his shoulder. "She called your name as she was fading. She remembers you." When the doctor left, Ethan turned to Ava. Who would do this to her? Ava's gaze met his. Someone who didn't want her found. His fists clenched, his jaw tightened. He whispered, "Then we find them." She studied him. "What if the truth is worse than the silence?" "I don't care," Ethan said. "I've lived 15 years with an empty coffin. I want answers." Just then, a nurse walked out holding a small cloth bundle. "Mr. Blake?" she asked. Ethan stepped forward. This was inside her dress pocket, she said, unwrapping it. Inside lay a single, rusted chain link, small, but unmistakably part of a shackle. Ethan stared at it, expressionless. "She kept it," Ava whispered. "All this time, as proof." Ethan nodded slowly. "Then whoever did this is still out there." Ava met his eyes. "And they'll know you found her." Ethan looked down at the chain, then back toward the room where his mother lay. "This isn't over," he said. His voice was low, steady, and terrifyingly clear. The automatic doors hissed open as Ethan and Ava stepped back into the trauma ward. The sterile smell of antiseptic pushed against them like a cold wall. Nurses moved swiftly around Mama Ruth's bed, adjusting tubes, checking monitors, calling out numbers Ethan couldn't make sense of. He stood there, rigid, every muscle locked, afraid that if he blinked, she would vanish again just as she had 15 years ago. The monitor beeped in slow, uneven intervals, each one a knife twisting in his chest. Inside the room, a nurse lifted Mama Ruth's fragile wrist to place an identification band. Ava leaned closer, watching the tremor in the nurse's hand as she noticed the faint rings of bruising around the bone. "She must have been restrained," the nurse murmured softly. Ethan heard it. His knuckles whitened as he gripped the rail. Restrained? What does that even mean? Who would restrain an elderly woman, my mother? The nurse hesitated, glancing at the doctor for permission. He stepped forward. "Mr. Blake, please understand. Whatever your mother endured, It lasted years. The malnutrition, the injuries, the infection in her arm. He sighed, lowering his voice. This wasn't homelessness. This was captivity. The words hit Ethan harder than his worst business loss. Harder than the night he buried an empty coffin engraved with her name. It can't be, he whispered. We looked for her everywhere. Police, private investigators, how could she be held somewhere for 15 years and no one know? Ava stepped closer. Her voice, even through the swelling in her cheek, was gentle. Someone made sure she stayed hidden. Ethan turned to her, guilt crawling up his throat again. I hurt you, and you're still helping me. You were angry, she said simply. I've seen worse from men who had far less reason. He winced, unable to look at her bruised face for more than a second. That's not an excuse. Maybe not, she said. But right now, your mother needs you focused, not drowning in shame. Ethan swallowed hard. I don't deserve her forgiveness. Or yours. Ava didn't answer. Her eyes drifted toward Mama Ruth, whose breaths were still irregular, shallow, fragile as torn paper. A moment later, a nurse invited them back inside. Mama Ruth lay under a thin hospital blanket, her face pale against the white pillow. The tubes and wires made her look impossibly small. Ethan walked slowly to her bedside, each step heavy with 15 years of grief. He took her hand, shocked by how light it felt in his. Mama, he whispered. Can you hear me? Her eyelids fluttered. Ava stood near the foot of the bed, hands clasped tightly, silently urging the woman to wake. Mama, it's me. It's Ethan. His voice cracked on his own name. I'm here. I'm not losing you again. The old woman's lips trembled. My boy. Ethan collapsed forward, pressing her hand against his forehead. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I thought you were gone. I had no idea you were out there suffering. I failed you. Her hand twitched weakly, brushing his cheek. No. My son. You are here. A cough shook her frail body. A nurse hurried forward to steady her. Ethan stepped aside, terrified that even his presence might hurt her. The doctor looked at him. She's conscious, but we must keep her calm. Her heart is extremely weak. Mama Ruth's eyes drifted toward Ava. You, she whispered. Ava stepped forward, startled. Yes, ma'am. I'm here. The old woman's eyes warmed. You stopped him from sin. Ava swallowed the lump forming in her throat. I only wanted to protect you. A faint smile cracked through the deep lines of Mama Ruth's face. God sent you. Ethan blinked hard, tears filling his eyes. He did, he said, voice trembling. Even when I didn't deserve it. Aster. Mama Ruth's gaze moved to the small cloth bundle sitting on the bedside table, the rusted chain link. Her eyes darkened. She reached toward it with trembling fingers. Ava quickly handed it to her. Ethan watched, his heart thudding painfully. Mama, what is that? Why did you keep it? Her breath quivered. Proof. Ethan leaned closer. Proof of what? Her voice was barely a whisper. The man who took me. Silence gripped the room. Even the machines seemed to hush. Ava froze. Ethan straightened slowly, dread chilling him from the spine outward. The man, he repeated, his voice shaking. Someone took you? Mama? Who? Her eyes filled with tears, fear, grief, memory all tangled together. Someone, close. Ethan felt the floor tilt beneath him. Close? Who? But her strength ran out. Her eyes shut, her hand falling limp against the sheets. Alarms beeped. Nurses rushed forward. She's losing consciousness. Ethan stepped back, horror spreading across his face. Mama! Mama! Stay with me! A nurse gently pushed him aside. Sir, please let us work. Ava grabbed Ethan's arm before he could lunge forward again. Let them help her, she said firmly. She'll come back. She will. Ethan's chest heaved with a choked sob. She can't leave again. She just got back. Ava steadied him, even as her own knees shook. Hope isn't gentle, Ethan. It hurts before it heals. He looked at her, eyes wet. Why are you still here, after everything I did? She met his gaze without blinking. Because your mother deserves someone in the room who won't lose their head. And right now, that's not you. His breath caught not in anger, but in the quiet realization that she was right. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the doctor stepped out, removing his gloves. She's stable again, but she needs rest. You both should get some water and sit down. Is line. Ava let out a shaky breath and gently guided Ethan toward the waiting area. He followed her like a man walking through fog. Once seated, Ethan pressed his hands over his face. I need to know, he whispered. Who took her? Who kept her hidden? Someone close. Someone who betrayed us. Ava looked at him, the bruising on her cheek beginning to darken. We'll find out, she said softly. But not with rage, with truth. He looked up at her, and for the first time, he truly understood. This girl bleeding, exhausted. Half his size had more strength in her steady gaze than he had in all his wealth. Thank you, he said quietly. Ava lowered her eyes. We're not done yet. Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of a promise. Night settled over the hospital like a heavy blanket, dimming the hallways into long stretches of muted gold and shadow. The bustle of the trauma unit had softened into a low hum, machines beeping steadily. Rubber soles whispering across waxed floors. Distant conversations slipping through partially open doors. Yet for Ethan Blake, the world was nothing but a narrowing tunnel. The glass window between him and the room where his mother fought for breath. He stood there unmoving, forehead nearly touching the glass, hands pressed against it as if he were holding himself upright. Exhaustion weighed on him, not the kind born from board meetings or billion-dollar negotiations, but the kind that sinks into bone, an exhaustion made of fear, guilt, and 15 stolen years. Behind him, Ava slipped quietly into the waiting area with 2 paper cups of lukewarm hospital coffee. Her lip was split, her cheek swollen, but she moved with a determined steadiness. You should drink something, she said softly. He didn't turn. I'm fine. You're not. People who are fine don't shake like that. He glanced down. His hands were trembling. Ava stepped beside him, offering the coffee. He hesitated, then took it, though it barely touched his lips. The room beyond the glass was calmer now. Nurses had dimmed the lights around Mama Ruth, letting her rest. She lay on her side, an oxygen line threading gently beneath her nose, her chest rising and falling with shallow rhythm. Ethan swallowed hard. She looked so fragile. Ava nodded. But she came back from something no one should survive. Fragile doesn't mean weak. He almost smiled at that. Almost. A long moment passed before he spoke again. You saved her. No, Ava said. I stopped you from hurting her. That's all. That isn't all. His voice cracked slightly. If you hadn't stepped in, if you hadn't insisted, I insisted because I saw something, she said. Not just the birthmark. Her face. Yours. There was a story there, waiting for someone to say it out loud. He looked at her bruised cheek, a hot wave of guilt rising again. And I hit you for it, she shrugged. You hit out of fear and anger. People make terrible decisions when they're cornered. That's not comforting. It's not meant to be. It's just the truth. He let out a slow breath, something between a sigh and acceptance. Then he looked back into the room. I don't understand how she survived, he murmured. If she was taken, if she was hurt, she held on because she believed she'd see you again, Ava said quietly. Some people live on hope longer than they can live on food. He turned fully toward her now. How do you know things like that? Pain teaches, she replied simply. Just then, the door at the far end of the hall clicked open. A janitor entered, an older black man with gray in his beard, wearing a dark green maintenance uniform. He moved with the weary familiarity of someone who had seen too many tragedies, too many stories play out inside hospital walls. He carried a mop bucket and pushed it slowly across the floor until he reached Ethan and Ava. He paused, eyes shifting to the window behind them, the room where Mama Ruth slept. You're her boy, aren't you? He said quietly. Ethan stiffened. Do I know you? The man shook his head. No, sir. But I knew her. Long time ago. Ava stepped closer. How? He glanced around, making sure no one was close enough to overhear. Not here, he murmured. Someone might be listening. Ethan frowned. Why would anyone be listening? The man's gaze hardened. Because your mother wasn't just lost. He lowered his voice even further. She was taken. A chill crept up Ethan's spine. Taken by who? The janitor swallowed, eyes full of old fear. By someone in your family. Ava gasped softly, one hand rising to her mouth. Ethan felt the ground shift. My family? Are you out of your mind? No, sir. The man said firmly. I worked for the Blake household years back, the old estate in North Georgia, before your father passed. Ethan's breath left him in a rush. Who are you? Name's Samuel, he said, offering a trembling hand. I kept to myself after things went bad, but when I saw the news, he gestured toward the hallway TV, tuned to a muted local station. Saw you bringing that woman here. I knew it was her. Ethan seized his arm. Tell me now. Who did this to her? Samuel hesitated, eyes flicking toward the corners of the ceiling as if afraid of hidden cameras. I'll tell you only once, he whispered. Your mother discovered the truth about your father's will. She knew who the rightful heir was and who wasn't. Ethan's jaw tightened. Meaning what? Meaning someone stood to lose everything if she talked. Ava took a step forward. Who? Samuel. Samuel lowered his voice to a trembling whisper. Your uncle, Richard Blake. Silence. Something inside Ethan broke and reformed into something stronger, colder. My uncle? He repeated slowly. The man who helped run Bright Core? The man who helped raise me after my father died? Samuel nodded solemnly. He feared your mother would expose him. So he had her removed. Id knows. Ethan staggered back as though struck. Ava reached toward him. Ethan. But his world was spinning. The empty coffin, the years of searching, the inheritance battles he never questioned, the chain link, the bruises, the voice whispering someone close. It all clicked into place with horrifying clarity. How long have you known? He whispered. Since the day she vanished, Samuel replied. But your uncle paid people to keep quiet. Some were too scared to talk. Others took his money and never looked back. Ethan clenched his fist so tightly his nails cut into his palms. And why talk now? Samuel looked toward Ava, then toward Mama Ruth's door. Because she lived, he said softly. Because she found her way back. And because the truth doesn't stay buried forever, Ava whispered. Justice may not be fair, but it is patient. Ethan's voice, when it came, was barely human. I'll make him pay. Ava caught his arm. No, you'll find the truth. Then justice. In that order. He stared at her, her swollen, bruised face, her steady eyes, and something in him calmed, but only a fraction. Samuel leaned closer. Be careful, Mr. Blake. Your uncle is powerful. Connected. If he learns your mother survived. He hesitated. He won't hesitate to finish what he started. Ethan swallowed hard, the weight of the warning sinking into his bones. She isn't dying again, he said. Not this time. Not on his terms. Ava nodded, her voice gentle but unwavering. Then we stand together, and we start with what she tried to tell you before she lost consciousness. Ethan looked at her sharply. What? Ava repeated the word Mama Ruth had whispered earlier, the one that echoed like prophecy. Beware. Ethan turned toward the glass, toward the fragile figure lying in the dim hospital room. And he understood. The truth was no longer simply a mystery. It was a threat. And it was coming. The early hours of morning crept into the hospital like a thief, quiet, soft, but relentless. A pale pink light seeped through the windows, touching the sterile tile floors and the sleeping forms in the waiting room. The coffee had gone cold. The hum of machines echoed faintly, a background symphony to worry and weariness. Ethan sat in a vinyl chair outside his mother's room, his head in his hands. The words Samuel had whispered earlier still looped in his mind, like a scratched record. Your uncle. He had her removed. The betrayal sank in deeper with every breath. He had trusted Richard, grew up in the man's shadow, led him into boardrooms, family dinners, every part of his life. And all along, that man had been hiding the truth. Behind the glass, Mama Ruth stirred. Ethan looked up at once, his heart leaping. A nurse inside noticed the movement too. She leaned in, checked the monitors, then gently helped Mama Ruth adjust the oxygen line under her nose. "She's waking up," the nurse said softly, stepping toward the door. "You can come in, but one at a time, please." Ethan rose immediately. Ava stood up too, but paused. "Go," she said. "She needs to see you first." He hesitated for half a second, then gave a grateful nod. He stepped through the doorway into the dim, humming room. Mama Ruth's eyes opened slowly. The whites had a cloudy haze to them, but her gaze sharpened as they landed on Ethan's face. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice papery. "Mama." He moved to her side, dropping to one knee. "You're awake," she smiled faintly. "I had a dream that my boy had become a man." He tried to laugh, but the sound cracked under the weight of emotion. "You dreamed right, though I think I lost pieces of myself along the way." She reached up, touching his jaw with fragile fingers. "But you're here now. That's enough." A beat passed before Ethan whispered, "Mama, what happened to you?" Her fingers froze on his skin. "You don't have to tell me all of it," he added quickly. "But I need to know. I need to understand." Mama Ruth's gaze shifted to the window, where morning light spilled in like revelation. Then she slowly turned back. 15 years ago, she began. "I was coming home from the farmer's market. It was a Sunday. I remember. The air smelled of peaches. Ethan's throat tightened. "I had just gotten off the bus. Your father had passed not long before, and I'd spent months going over his legal papers. There were things in his will, things your uncle didn't want anyone to see." Ethan blinked. "Like what?" She took a breath. "Your father left Bright Core in your name. All of it. He wanted you to inherit it when you turned 25. Until then, it was to remain in trust. But Richard, your uncle, knew. He'd helped draft the early documents. He thought the board would never support you too young, too green. But I said no. I said I would make sure your father's wishes were honored." Her hand clenched weakly on the blanket. "I never got the chance. That Sunday, a car pulled up beside me. 2 men jumped out. They didn't ask questions. They dragged me into the back seat, blindfolded me. I screamed, but no one stopped." Ethan's face paled. "I was taken to a house big, empty, somewhere in the hills outside Savannah, I think. Underground. No windows. A mattress on the floor. A bolt on the outside of the door." Tears slid silently down her cheeks. "They kept me there for months. Brought food once a day. Sometimes not at all. I begged them. I told them you'd be looking for me." "And they said," Ethan asked, barely breathing, "that you'd been told I was dead, that a car crash had taken me, and that you'd already buried me." "It dizzy." Ethan pressed his hands to his mouth, rocking forward. "They lied to me. Lied to everyone." She nodded faintly. "And I started to believe I really had died. Only my body didn't know it yet." A moment passed before she continued. "One day, one of the men, an older one, got drunk. He let me go to the kitchen. I saw the sunrise through a cracked window. I thought maybe I could escape, but I was too weak." Her eyes drifted shut for a second, then reopened. "He slipped on the stairs one night, broke his neck. He didn't come back. No one did." Ethan's brows furrowed. "You escaped?" "I crawled out," she said. "I don't know how far I walked. I only know that after a while, no one called me by name anymore. I became just another beggar woman." Ethan leaned closer, gently brushing her hair from her forehead. "Why didn't you tell anyone? The police?" She looked at him with deep, broken eyes. Would they have believed me? A half-mad woman in rags claiming to be the mother of Ethan Blake? He had no answer. "I kept the chain," she added. "A piece from the bolt they used. I wrapped it in cloth, carried it in my pocket, because I needed to remember it was real. That I was real." Ethan swallowed hard. "You don't need that anymore. I'm here, and I believe you." She smiled, then winced from the effort. "I thought you'd forget me," she said softly. "That the world would turn you into someone I wouldn't recognize." I almost became that, he admitted. But someone stopped me. A girl named Ava, her eyes lit with recognition. The maid, yes, she, has a light in her, Mama Ruth whispered. Don't lose it, Ethan nodded. They sat quietly for a few moments. Then she looked at him again. There's more, she said. Your uncle. He was always careful, but he was also arrogant. He thought no one would trace anything back to him. If we do, then we will, Ethan said. We'll expose him. Her hand found his. Do it with honor. Not hate. Ethan blinked away tears. I will. A knock at the door broke the stillness. Ava stepped in slowly, eyes darting between them. She's awake? She asked gently. Mama Ruth smiled weakly. My angel. Ethan turned to Ava. She told me everything. Ava moved closer, her face softening. Then the real work begins. It not. Ethan looked at both of them, his mother, his protector, and something inside him steadied. Yes, he said, and we'll do it together. The next morning came too quickly. Ethan Blake stood before the polished mirror in his penthouse bathroom, his reflection far too familiar and entirely unrecognizable. The bruises beneath his eyes weren't from fists, but from revelation. His mother, alive. His uncle, a traitor. And himself blinded by wealth, by pride, by everything he thought made him a man. He adjusted his cufflinks. The silver ones his mother had given him for his 30th birthday. The ones he hadn't worn since the day she was declared dead. Today, he wore them with intention. In the living room, Ava sat cross-legged on the edge of a leather couch, her borrowed clothes slightly wrinkled from sleeping upright. She'd refused the guest room, refused rest. Really, she'd spent the night combing through what little public information there was on Richard Blake, and even less on the family's private financial holdings. When Ethan walked out, she looked up. You look like you're headed into battle, she said, sipping black coffee from a Brightcore mug. I am. She stood. So what's the plan? I'm going to the board, he said. I'm going to look Richard in the eye and pretend I don't know a thing. Her brow furrowed. Why pretend? Because if he knows we're onto him, he'll cover his tracks, erase evidence, move money, or worse, he'll try to silence her again. Ava crossed her arms. Then you better be a damn good actor. Ethan gave her a faint smile. I've been pretending since I was 12. I'll manage. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. And if he suspects you already know, then I'll remind him why I run the company now. She nodded once. Be careful. Ethan, his voice turned quiet. I will. The Brightcore headquarters sat like a glass cathedral in downtown Atlanta, its reflective windows glittering under the southern sun. Inside, the boardroom was already full. 12 men and women in tailored suits sat around the mahogany table, murmuring over morning espresso and quarterly reports. At the far end sat Richard Blake, gray hair, crisp navy suit, eyes like polished steel. The man had aged well but not kindly. His handshake still crushed fingers, his voice still carried the weight of command, and his presence still stank of something Ethan could never name as a child but now recognized clearly. Calculated control. Ethan entered with the easy smile of a man with nothing to hide. Morning, he said, tossing his leather folder onto the table. Richard rose with a wide, performative grin. Ethan, we weren't expecting you today. Thought you were on leave. I was, Ethan said, taking his seat. But I decided to check in. We're calling for us. Everything all right? Richard asked, eyes gleaming just a little too much. Peachy, Ethan replied. Just needed to be reminded of what a well-oiled machine looks like. Polite chuckles circled the table. The meeting began, routine at first. Financials, market growth, technology partnerships. Ethan watched Richard the entire time, noting every tick, every pause, every word chosen a little too carefully. Then, Ethan spoke. Casually. I want to open up a review, he said, spinning a pen between his fingers. Richard arched a brow. A review? Yes, Ethan said, of the board's records, specifically, from 15 years ago. The room stilled. That's a long time ago, Richard said slowly. Exactly why it needs a fresh look. So much of our infrastructure was built, then contracts, property acquisitions, legal trusts. Richard's smile faltered, just for a second. That was when your father passed. Are you feeling nostalgic? Something like that, Ethan said. One of the board members leaned forward. Any particular reason for the review, Ethan? He smiled. Just good governance. It's time we make sure everything back then was as clean as we thought. Richard spoke again, this time with a sharper edge. We already went through audits during the transition. I know, Ethan said coolly. But this time, I'll be personally leading the review. No external firm. I want eyes on every file, especially those involving family-held assets. Now the smiles were gone. The room hummed with quiet tension. Richard leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. I trust you know what you're doing. I always do, Ethan replied, meeting his uncle's eyes. For a long moment, neither blinked. Back at the hospital, Ava sat beside Mama Ruth's bed. She was feeding her spoonfuls of warm broth, careful not to spill a drop. The old woman was stronger this morning, her voice still frail but clearer. You stayed all night, Mama Ruth whispered. I don't leave people behind, Ava replied softly. You remind me of someone. Who? My sister. She had that same stubborn grace. Left home when she was young. Always helped strangers before herself. Ava smiled faintly. I guess it runs in the sisterhood. Mama Ruth studied her face. He's going into danger. Ava nodded. He knows. Oh, does he know what Richard is capable of? Ava looked down. He's beginning to. Mama Ruth gripped her hand weakly. Don't let him do this alone. Promise me. I won't, Ava said, tightening her hold. I'll be his shadow if I have to. Mama Ruth sighed, her voice barely audible. There are things I haven't told him yet, things I remembered in pieces. But he has to be ready. Then I'll make sure he is. That night, Ethan returned to the hospital, face drawn, eyes hard. He found Ava in the hallway. Well? She asked. I saw it in his eyes, Ethan said. He knows I'm coming for him. Ava's heart skipped. And now I'm certain, he whispered. Richard was behind it. All of it. She stepped closer. What's next? We crack open the books, Ethan said. We find the paper trail. And when we do, you bring it to the police? He paused. No, not yet. Why not? Because I want him to know what it feels like to lose everything first. This present that is not rapper, guys. His voice held a fire she hadn't heard before, controlled, cold, but burning all the same. Ava didn't argue. She simply stood beside him, facing the storm together. 2 days later, the sun baked the slate roof of the old estate in North Georgia, once the pride of the Blake family's legacy. The iron gates were rusting at the hinges, but the hedges still bore the shape of lions, silent, majestic, and watching. Inside, the air was stale with age and the cold scent of wealth. It was here, among dust-covered oil portraits and antique oak panels, that Ethan believed the truth would reveal itself. He and Ava stepped out of the SUV, the gravel crunching beneath their shoes. A locksmith trailed behind them, already breaking the seal on the old side entrance. I haven't been here since I was 17, Ethan said quietly, staring up at the house. Ava glanced at the grand windows and the heavy stone archway above them. Looks like the kind of place where secrets get buried. He nodded. Or locked behind doors no one dares open. Inside, Ethan led the way through echoing halls. Dust clung to every surface like secrets too long undisturbed. He walked with purpose now, the memory of his mother's story, fueling each step. Somewhere inside this house, he believed, was the paper trail documents from 15 years ago that could connect Richard Blake to her disappearance. They just had to find it. They began in the study. It was a room from another century, mahogany bookshelves, high-backed chairs, and a liquor cabinet that hadn't been touched in years. At the far end stood a locked filing cabinet, rust creeping up the hinges. Ethan handed the locksmith the keyring retrieved from the office archives. Start with this one. Ava wandered to the desk, running her fingers across a thin layer of dust. She opened a drawer and found stacks of old correspondence, handwritten letters, memos with the Blake logo. and a small leather journal labeled Personal, R.B. She raised an eyebrow. You might want to see this. Ethan turned from the cabinet, eyes narrowing as he approached. He flipped the journal open. The handwriting was Richard's neat, angular, meticulous. He skimmed a few pages. Meeting with trustee moved to Tuesday. Ethan still too young to understand the weight of this legacy. 8. Ruth is asking questions. Too many. She's combing through the estate files again. Contact Maid. Discretion will be maintained. Must ensure silence. Ethan's jaw tightened. He wrote it all down, like a man who didn't think anyone would dare read it. Ava looked over his shoulder. He wasn't hiding it. He was memorializing it. That's even worse. At that moment, the locksmith popped the final drawer on the filing cabinet. Got it. Ethan and Ava rushed over. Inside were dozens of folders, some labeled in bold black marker: inheritance, trust transfer, asset shift, and custody of estate. Ethan pulled out the file marked inheritance. Inside was a copy of his father's will, one Ethan had never seen before. He opened it, and his chest tightened. This is it, he whispered. This version. It's not the one the lawyers read to me after Dad died. What's different? Ava asked. He pointed to a line buried deep on the second page. It names me sole heir and gives Ruth temporary oversight until I turn 25. The version I saw put the estate in Richard's hands, until further notice. Ava exhaled. So he doctored the will. Suppressed this one. He had it rewritten. And likely paid off the legal team to validate it. Can you prove it? Ethan reached deeper into the drawer, pulling out a notarized letter, one with the original law firm's seal, and a signature that didn't match any he'd seen on file. I can now. I devered 90 and with Cruz. Ava flipped through another folder, then paused, her brow furrowed. What? Ethan asked. She held up a bank ledger. These transfers. Look at the dates. He stepped beside her. Large sums of money, tens of thousands, moved to shell corporations and offshore accounts, all shortly after his mother's disappearance. And here, she pointed again. Payments labeled consultation fees. Ethan's eyes narrowed. That's a cover. For what? He looked at her grimly. For whoever helped take her, with Prosit and them bitterest. She stared at the names on the document, initials only. D, H, M, L, S, G. We need to find out who these people are. Ethan nodded. If we can trace these accounts, we'll know everyone involved. And if we can tie the timing to when Mama Ruth vanished, we can take it to the police. Ava finished. No. Ethan's voice was like steel. She blinked. No? We take it to the press, to the world. Ethan, they buried her alive, he said. They left her to rot. I won't let them disappear into silence. I want everyone to know what kind of man Richard Blake really is. Ava studied him. That kind of exposure comes with danger. I'm not afraid anymore. She nodded. Then we do it together. Back in Atlanta, Richard Blake sipped his bourbon in the penthouse suite of a downtown hotel. He stared out the window at the city he helped build, unaware of what had just been found. A phone rang. He answered. Yes? A thin voice crackled through the line. There was activity at the North Georgia estate. Ethan's team opened the study. Richard didn't respond right away. Then, coldly, shut it down. Whatever's left. And find out who's helping him. He ended the call. For a moment, his reflection stared back at him in the glass, older, but still powerful. He smirked. Let the boy dig, he muttered. Let's see if he knows what to do with what he finds. It is friend. That night, Ethan and Ava sat in his office. Documents spread across the desk. Computers buzzing. Ava leaned back. So what now? Ethan stared at the original will, then at the ledger, then finally, at his phone. We call a journalist, he said. Someone who doesn't owe the Blakes anything. And after that? He glanced at the window, city lights blinking like stars below. After that, he said, we set the world on fire. With the Snarry, Ethan sat alone in his office as midnight swallowed the city skyline. The lights from the buildings below glittered like a constellation of quiet witnesses, each window a silent eye on a world that rarely blinked. His phone lay on the desk, a number already dialed, his finger hovering above the call button. He wasn't calling a lawyer. He wasn't calling a board member. He was calling her, the one person in Atlanta who still remembered how to chase fire with a notebook and a tape recorder. Lena Kavanaugh, he murmured under his breath. Pulitzer nominated, disgraced, then vindicated. Known for exposing corruption within the mayor's office a decade ago, and for paying dearly for it. She hadn't worked for a major outlet since. Instead, she wrote long-form investigations for a fiercely independent online journal called The Lantern. Read mostly by skeptics, old-school thinkers, and Americans who still believed in deep digging over headline chasing. He pressed call 9. The phone rang once. Twice. Then a voice answered, smoky and sharp-edged. This better be life or death. It might be, Ethan said. It's Ethan Blake. A pause. Well, that's a name I didn't expect on my phone tonight. Another pause. You got 30 seconds to make me not hang up. My mother is alive. Dead silence. Then, cautiously, you buried her 15 years ago. I buried a closed casket. He said. We were lied to. She was taken. By someone in my family. I have the proof. We're quote. Lena didn't respond at first. Then, slowly. And you want to talk to me because you don't owe my family anything, and you won't back off when the pressure comes. More silence. Then a short breath. Meet me tomorrow. She said. 8 a.m. Southbound coffee. Back patio. Don't bring a lawyer. Don't bring a bodyguard. If I see you with a briefcase or a goon, I walk. He nodded as if she could see him. I'll be there. Icon. Southbound coffee was tucked away on the edge of Grant Park, surrounded by overgrown trees and ivy-draped brick. It didn't look like the kind of place where billionaires held secret meetings, which made it perfect. Ethan arrived 5 minutes early. Lena was already seated on the back patio, sipping black coffee and wearing dark sunglasses. Her long gray coat fluttered in the wind like a flag that had seen too many battles. She didn't stand when he approached. She only tilted her head slightly. You look thinner in person, and you sound taller in print. She cracked a smile. Sit. He did, and for the next 10 minutes, he laid out everything. The false will, the missing years, his mother's reappearance, Richard's hidden transactions, Ava's role in uncovering it all. He slid across copies of the journal entries and ledgers, the notarized will, and the shell company names. Lena barely blinked. When he finished, she leaned back and folded her arms. Well, she said finally. Either you're telling the truth, or you've crafted the greatest revenge fantasy since Greek tragedy. I have more, Ethan said. Audio from my mother. A recorded statement. We're verifying financials as we speak. Why now? She asked. Why bring this to me, when you could quietly take it to court? Let the law do its thing. Because I don't trust the law to do its thing, he said. Not when Richards bought half the judges and slept with the other half's fundraisers. Lena nodded slowly. That's fair. He hesitated, then added, and because if something happens to me or Ava or my mother, I want the truth to already be out there. I want you to publish everything. She studied him over the rim of her cup. You're not afraid anymore. No, he said. I'm furious. A pause. Then you've come to the right woman. She gathered the documents into her satchel. I'll start cross-referencing within the hour, but I need access. Emails, board memos, anything that can't be waved away with a PR stunt. You'll have it, Ethan said. I'll get you the rest today. She stood, pushing her chair in. And Ethan, don't think this story ends with a headline. Once it's out there, you won't be able to put it back in the box. I don't want it in a box, he said. I want it in flames. Later that afternoon, Ava sat beside Mama Ruth in the hospital room, braiding her hair gently. The old woman's strength had returned in increments. Her appetite was better, her voice stronger, and her memory sharper. I heard him on the phone, Mama Ruth said suddenly, her voice breaking the silence. Ava paused. Richard? She nodded. The day before they took me, he was angry, talking to someone named Gaines or maybe it was Granger. Ava's brow furrowed. Do you remember what he said? He said, if she opens her mouth, we lose the whole damn estate. She looked up at Ava. That's when I knew I had to act. I thought I had time. I didn't. Ava squeezed her hand. You made it back. That's all that matters now. The old woman's eyes filled with tears. You believed me when no one else did. You're the reason he believes now too, Ava said. That night, back in Ethan's home office, the first draft of Lena's exposé appeared in his inbox. He opened it with trembling hands. The Billionaire's Mother. A legacy of lies buried alive. The subheadline was worse. How power, greed, and silence nearly erased a woman from history until her son finally listened. He read the first few paragraphs. Lena's voice was razor-sharp, unflinching. She named Richard directly, laid out the evidence, told Ava's part, described Ruth's captivity with chilling precision, and it was only part one. Ava stepped in quietly behind him, reading over his shoulder. She doesn't pull punches, Ava said. She throws them, Ethan murmured. He sat back, closing the laptop. We release it in 48 hours. That gives us time to finalize the rest of the files. And after that, he looked at her, his eyes now calm, focused. After that, Richard Blake answers to the world. Richard Blake wasn't a man easily shaken. In his 62 years, he had weathered stock market crashes, lawsuits, boardroom mutinies, and even the death of his own brother, with little more than a furrowed brow and another ice cube in his scotch. But tonight, standing in his private penthouse study with the city sprawled beneath him, something felt different. He had been receiving calls all evening. Not the kind that screamed panic, but the kind that whistled through the cracks. His longtime assistant had canceled tomorrow's lunch. The board chair texted a cryptic, "We should talk." And, worst of all, he'd heard that Lena Kavanaugh had been seen in Grant Park again. Richard muttered a curse. He pulled open the drawer of his desk and took out the burner phone he kept for emergencies. Only a few trusted contacts knew the number. He dialed a code, waited, and spoke when the voice on the other end answered. "I told you to monitor Ethan, not sit on your hands. We've been watching him," the voice replied. "But he's being careful. No digital leaks, no paper trails, and now he's using Kavanaugh? She's a wild card." Richard's voice turned icy. "She's a damn grenade. If she publishes anything, even suggests my involvement, she won't get that far. We have people ready. Not enough. Find someone inside, someone close, a staffer, a driver, I don't care. If Ethan or that maid opens their mouths before I control the narrative, everything we've built comes crashing down." There was a pause. Then, understood. Richard ended the call. He stared out the floor-to-ceiling window. His reflection looked back, distorted slightly by the glass. He raised his glass to it. "To survival," he muttered, then drank. The next morning, Ava made her way to the mailroom of Ethan's building. Though she'd insisted she was fine staying in the guest house behind the estate, she'd come in early to retrieve a few confidential envelopes. Lena requested handwritten letters, some medical reports, and the original time-stamped photo of Ruth's bracelet before it was cleaned. She hadn't expected the elevator to stop on floor 17. When the doors opened, a tall woman in a maintenance uniform stepped in, too well-groomed to be just another cleaner. Her badge said, "Temp Staffing Solutions." After that, Ava offered a polite nod. "Good morning." The woman returned it, cool and polite. The elevator resumed, but Ava noticed the woman's gaze flick toward the envelope in her hands, specifically the name L. Kavanaugh, printed in block letters. Just as she realized it, the elevator jerked. The woman pressed the emergency stop. Ava froze. "What are you doing?" The woman smiled faintly. "Just a quick word." She stepped closer, voice low. "Miss Kavanaugh is playing with matches. You might want to think twice about delivering gasoline." Ava's grip on the envelope tightened. "Who are you?" she asked. The woman tilted her head. "Just someone who knows how stories end, especially ones told too loud." The elevator buzzed, and the emergency light flashed. Ava stood tall, not flinching. "If this is supposed to scare me, you'll have to do better." The woman leaned in closer. "Careful, Miss Jones. There's always a price to being the hero." The elevator resumed. The woman stepped out on the next floor without another word. Ava exhaled only once the doors closed again. She immediately called Ethan. Ethan listened in silence as Ava relayed the encounter. He stood in the hallway outside Mama Ruth's room, one hand gripping the phone, the other clenched in a fist. "They've started," he said quietly, "trying to intimidate us." "Won't work," Ava replied. "But it means we're close." He nodded. "Then it's time to accelerate. We have done." That afternoon, Lena published part 1. It hit the Lantern at 2 p.m. sharp. By 2:07, the site was crashing. By 2:15, number Ruth Blake was alive was trending on Twitter. And by 2:30, Richard's personal PR firm was sending out a hasty press release. "Mr. Richard Blake has no knowledge of the allegations presented and is deeply troubled by the manipulation of facts. The Blake family will respond formally through legal channels." Ethan read it and smiled coldly. "They're scrambling," he told Ava, who sat across from him, laptop open, dozens of open tabs flashing with news alerts. "They're also watching us," she said. "That woman in the elevator wasn't bluffing. She knew what she was doing. Then let's give them something else to watch." Ethan clicked open a folder on his desktop labeled Phase 2. Inside were video files. One was a recorded interview with Ruth, given just 2 days earlier, where she softly recalled being threatened by Richard's assistant before she vanished. Another showed Ethan reading the original will aloud, time-stamped, notarized. But the third video was different. It showed Ava, bruised, calm, her voice firm as she described the night Ethan struck her, and how even then, she stayed because she believed in the truth. "This will go public next," Ethan said. "They won't expect us to show our own scars." Ava didn't look away. "Good. Let's bleed first. Let them follow." That evening, Richard sat alone again, this time in a private security firm's underground office. On the screen before him were news anchors, panel debates, and tweets dissecting the story. One phrase kept appearing: "Justice doesn't care who wears the suit." He reached for the remote, clicked the TV off, and turned to his assistant. "Find out where she's being kept," he said. "Ruth?" "Yes, and then find a way to move her." Quietly. "You want her gone?" "I want her unreachable." The assistant hesitated. "That's going to be difficult." Richard's gaze turned lethal. "So is breathing with broken ribs. Make it happen." Meanwhile, at the hospital, Ethan and Ava arrived for their nightly visit to Ruth, only to find her room empty. No nurses. No patient. Just an unplugged monitor and a cold bed. Ethan turned to the hallway, voice raw. "Where is she?" "Adia Mentor." Ava rushed to the nurse's station. "Where's Ruth Blake? She was in 417. The nurse blinked. "She was discharged." "What? By who?" "Her son." Ethan's breath caught. "I am her son." The nurse paled. Ava's voice broke. "They got to her." Ethan's jaw clenched as he turned to Ava. "We're out of time." The sterile smell of the hospital corridor turned suffocating as Ethan stood frozen, his fists clenched, knuckles white against his sides. The words echoed like a gunshot in his mind. She was discharged by her son. Ava touched his arm gently. "Ethan, we need to move. Now." He blinked, eyes wild. "Check the surveillance. Find the paperwork. There has to be footage. A signature." They rushed to the administrative wing, pushing past nurses and bewildered staff. At the security office, Ethan slammed his hand on the desk. "I want to see the video from room 417. Everything from the last 6 hours. We could." The guard hesitated, then scanned Ethan's face recognition flaring. "Yes, sir. Right away." The footage loaded on the monitor. At first, everything was quiet. Mama Ruth lay in her bed, eyes closed, monitors beeping steadily. Then, at 1:43 p.m., a man in scrubs entered. He walked with purpose, not rushed, not hesitant. He moved straight to the IV line and unplugged it. Ethan leaned closer. Zoom in on his badge. The screen sharpened. It read, "Dr. Lewis Carter, attending." Ava shook her head. "There's no Dr. Carter assigned to her." They kept watching. The man gently lifted Ruth into a wheelchair, covered her with a blanket, and rolled her out. No commotion, no resistance, no panic, as if she trusted him. "Stop right there," Ethan ordered. "Reverse. Zoom on the wheelchair." Ava squinted. "It's got a